20,000 riders appear on the eastern horizon. No warning, no declaration, just hoofbeats and dust. Within months, 300,000 Romans are fleeing westward, abandoning cities that stood for centuries. Empire meets thaw steppe. Iron discipline meets speed. And nobody in Rome understands what just hit them until it's far too late. The year is 370. The place is the Volga River Basin, modern southern Russia. A nomadic people called the Huns cross that river and the world changes. They're not the biggest army, they're not the most numerous tribe, but they move faster than anything Rome has ever faced, and they kill differently. Composite bows that outrange Roman weapons by 100 yards. Cavalry tactics that turn infantry formations into target practice. Psychological warfare that makes hardened legionaries throw down their shields before the first arrow flies. The Huns don't conquer territory the Roman way. They take tribute, they burn, they leave, and they make everyone remember. This script is researched and factual, using primary sources from Ammianus Marcellinus writing circa 395 in his Res Gestae, which provides the earliest systematic contemporary account of Hun warfare, and later 5th century accounts from Priscus of Panium, who actually visited Attila's court in 449, documented in fragments preserved through Jordanes. These aren't secondary compilations. These are eyewitness records and diplomatic mission reports from people who saw the Huns fight and negotiate. Now back to the information. Ammianus Marcellinus writes that the Huns came like a whirlwind from high mountains. The Alans fight, the Alans lose, some submit, some flee west. The Huns absorb the survivors who stay. New auxiliaries, new tactics. The Alan horsemen who joined the Huns bring knowledge of Roman frontier defenses. The Huns now know where the gaps are. King Ermanaric rules a confederation stretching from the Dniester to the Don, multiple tribes, tens of thousands of warriors. Ermanaric is old, but he's held this coalition together for decades. The Huns strike his eastern flank. Gothic infantry can't close the distance. Hun composite bows measure 120 to 150 centimeters. Horn belly, sinew back, wood core. The materials bond with animal glue. The result? Arrows travel 200 to 300 yards, with enough force to punch through leather and padded armor. Gothic shields don't help. Gothic spears can't reach. Ermanaric watches his formations dissolve. He kills himself rather than face capture. His great-nephew Vithamyrus takes over. He hires Hun mercenaries to fight the Alans, who are now raiding Gothic lands. The strategy fails. Vithamyrus dies in battle. The Grothangi fracture. Some clans submit to Hun overlordship. Others flee across the Dniester. They reach the Roman border and they beg to cross. Emperor Valens lets them in. He sees cheap labor and recruits. What he gets is a refugee crisis that will break the Eastern Roman army at Adrianople in 378. But that's another disaster. The Hun disaster is just beginning. His account is biased and dramatic, but the tactical details match. The Huns are short, stocky, scarred. They slash children's faces with iron to prevent beard growth and create intimidating scars. They live on horseback. They eat roots and half-raw meat warmed between thigh and saddle. They drink fermented mare's milk. They wear field mouse skins, sewn together. They avoid buildings, no agriculture, no permanent settlements. Pure nomadic pastoralism. They move camp constantly, and they fight in ways that terrify settled peoples. They draw enemies forward, then turn and fire across their horses' backs while galloping away. Parthian shots. The Romans call it that because the Parthians used the same technique 300 years earlier, but the Huns are faster. Their horses are steppe ponies, smaller than Roman cavalry mounts but hardier. They survive on less forage. They endure cold that kills Roman horses kept in warm stables. One Hun warrior often brings multiple remounts. Mid-battle they switch horses. Fresh mounts. The enemy thinks they're facing a force twice its actual size. Psychological multiplication. They're designed for shock when the arrows have done their work and you close for the kill. The Huns also use lassos. They rope enemy warriors off horses. They use javelins. They carry short swords and daggers for close work. And they use the Scythian axe, a tomahawk with a curved iron head on a wooden handle. Final assault weapon. But archery is their soul. A Hun learns to ride before he can walk. He learns to shoot at full gallop before age 10. By 20, he can hit a man's torso at 80 yards while moving at speed. Roman infantry wearing mail has a chance if they get close. They don't get close. Priscus of Panium describes the siege of Nisus, modern Niš in Serbia, in 441. The Huns bridge the river south of the city. They bring up wooden platforms on wheels with archers, shooting from behind woven willow screens covered in rawhide. Mobile artillery. They push these platforms to the walls. Behind them come rams. The defenders try to drop fire and stones. The rawhide shields absorb it. The Huns breach the wall. Nasus falls. The survivors are enslaved or killed. The bodies fill the streets. Years later, travelers report the stench makes the ruins uninhabitable. The Danube runs thick with bones. You don't pay, we burn your cities. You pay, we leave. Simple, effective, profitable. And it works because Rome is weak. Barbarian pressure in the Balkans. Internal religious conflicts. Limited military manpower. The army that conquered the Mediterranean world is gone. What's left are frontier garrisons, federati barbarian auxiliaries, and a core of professional units that can't be everywhere at once. Contemporary estimates of total Hun military capacity are unreliable. Ancient sources claim hundreds of thousands. Modern scholars, using organizational models and logistical constraints, suggest the core Hun cavalry force numbered around 20,000 warriors. But they control allied tribes: Gepids, Ostrogoths, Alans, Heruli, Siri. The full coalition can field perhaps 70,000 fighting men when fully mobilized. Still smaller than Rome's total military on paper. But the Romans are divided into frontier garrisons across 3 continents. The Huns concentrate their force. That's roughly 318 kilograms. At current values, that's over $13 million. For an empire that's lost its richest gold mines in Hispania to the Visigoths, this is crippling. But the Huns demand more. Rome must return all Hun refugees. Rome cannot ally with any tribe the Huns consider enemies. Essentially, Rome hands the Huns a veto over Roman foreign policy. And Rome agrees, Consul Plinthus signs. The Eastern Romans need peace. They have Vandals to fight in Africa. The Huns get paid to not destroy them, for now. They also claim a Roman bishop crossed into Hun territory and desecrated Hun graves for treasure. They demand the bishop. Rome refuses. The Huns attack. Roman generals try to negotiate. Theodosius sends Flavius Aspar to treat with Attila. Aspar sees disturbed graves. He can't verify the Hun claims. It doesn't matter. The Huns want plunder and leverage. The negotiations fail. The Huns drive deeper. Defended by garrison troops and local militia, they fall in weeks. The Huns don't occupy. They strip wealth, take slaves, burn infrastructure, and move on. Ammianus's earlier prediction proves true. The Huns are the wrath of Mars. Theodosius manages to negotiate a truce for 442. He recalls troops from the west. He's buying time to regroup. It doesn't work. The siege engines come up. The city falls as described earlier. Then they turn toward Constantinople. They take Philippopolis, modern Plovdiv in Bulgaria. They defeat Roman field armies in multiple engagements. The details are scarce, but the results are clear. The Huns reach the sea north and south of Constantinople. They can't breach the Theodosian walls. Those massive fortifications with triple defensive lines stop every assault. But the Huns don't need to take the capital. They just need to make Theodosius panic. Then the annual tribute triples from 700 pounds to 2,100 pounds of gold. Every year, 950 kilograms. Roughly $38 million in modern value. And Rome agrees. The Eastern Empire is exhausted. Plague, famine, and battlefield losses have broken its capacity to resist. The Huns have won without conquering a single province permanently. They just extract wealth and leave the wreckage. 445, Blida dies. The circumstances are mysterious. Most historians believe Attila murdered him. Direct assassination or arranged accident, the result is the same. Attila becomes sole ruler of the Hunnic Confederation. From this point forward, the legend of Attila, the Scourge of God, begins. He is described as short, with a large head and thin beard. He speaks Latin and Gothic. He's educated, cunning, and ruthless. And he knows the Romans are terrified. Ancient sources claim he reached Thermopylae in Greece. Modern scholarship disputes this. The logistics are difficult, and there's no strong archaeological evidence, but he definitely reaches the approaches to Constantinople again. The walls hold again, but the psychological damage is done. The Eastern Romans are bleeding gold in territory. Priscus of Panium, a Roman diplomat and historian, visits Attila's court in 449. His account survives in fragments, but it's invaluable. He describes Attila's headquarters in Wallachia, probably near modern Hungary, wooden buildings, animal skins, gold ornaments taken from Roman cities. Attila lives simply despite the wealth. He eats from wooden plates while his subordinates use Roman silver. He drinks from a wooden cup. His clothes are plain. The display is calculated. Attila is not corrupted by Roman luxury. He remains a nomad king, but the tribute keeps flowing. He demands Honoria and half the Western Roman Empire as her dowry. Valentinian refuses. Marcian, the new Eastern Roman emperor, also refuses to continue tribute payments. Attila decides to take by force what he can't extract through treaties. Ancient sources claim 300,000 to 700,000 men. Modern analysis suggests closer to 70,000 actual combatants, but the numbers are still massive for the time. He marches west into Gaul, modern France, his target, the rich province of Aquitaine beyond the Loire. If he takes Gaul, all of Western Europe is open. There is one man who can stop him, Flavius Aetius, the Magister Militum, supreme commander of Western Roman forces. Rome and its former enemies unite against the Hun threat. Attila chooses ground for a set battle. The location? The Catalonian plains between Troyes and Chalon-sur-Marne in the Champagne region. The site has never been conclusively identified. Modern proposals place it near La Chepe. Jordanus, writing later from Gothic sources, claims 15,000 dead on each side. The number is likely exaggerated, but the casualties are severe. Both armies pull back. They spend June 20th deploying. Attila forms his army in 3 divisions. Huns in the center under his direct command, Ostrogoths on the left under their king, Gepids and other allies on the right. Aetius does the same, Roman heavy infantry on the left. Visigoths under Theodoric on the right, Alans in the center. Sangiban's Alans are placed there deliberately. Surrounded by allies, they can't defect, and if they break, the Roman and Visigoth flanks can contain it. Both armies number at least 50,000. Some modern estimates push higher, perhaps 70,000 on each side. Infantry, cavalry, archers, both sides are mixed coalitions. One is Christian, one is pagan, but both are cobbled together from multiple tribes and peoples. It's not Rome versus the barbarians. It's coalition versus coalition, and everything depends on who takes the ridge first. So do the Romans and Visigoths. Aegis's forces reach it first. Attila's forces are pushed back. The high ground is lost. This is critical. The Hun composite bows need angle and distance to be effective. From lower ground, their advantage diminishes. The battle begins in earnest. Attila consults his diviners before the fight. They predict victory for the Romans, but the death of their commander. Attila decides to engage anyway. Some historians think this shows barbarian superstition. Others suggest he understands both sides will suffer massive casualties, and he's willing to trade losses if the Roman coalition fractures. On the other flank, the Roman infantry under Aetius engages the Gepids. The center is a swirling melee. Arrows fill the air. Hand-to-hand combat at close quarters. The Alans hold their position. No defection. The ridge advantage for the Romans is telling. The Huns can't break through. Modern historians are skeptical of precise numbers, but agree the losses are among the highest of any ancient battle. The Huns retreat to their camp. They build a defensive ring of wagons. Attila prepares to fight to the death. He orders a funeral pyre of saddles built. If the Romans break through, he'll burn himself rather than be captured. It doesn't come to that. Aetius doesn't press the attack. His coalition is exhausted. The Visigoths, leaderless and in mourning for Theodoric, withdraw. Aetius lets the Huns slip away. Some historians think this is a mistake. Others think Aetius deliberately preserves the Hun threat, so the Western Empire still needs him as a military leader. He crosses the Alps with his remaining forces. First target, Aquileia, at the head of the Adriatic. He takes it. The residents flee to islands offshore. Those islands later become Venice. City after city in northeastern Italy falls. Padua, Verona, Milan. Roman defenses collapse. The road to Rome itself is open. Nothing stands between Attila and the capital. Legend says Leo is accompanied by visions of Saints Peter and Paul who threaten Attila with divine punishment if he attacks Rome. The reality is probably more complex. Attila's army is weakened. Malaria is spreading through the ranks. Supplies are running low. And Marcian, the Eastern Roman emperor, has launched a counteroffensive into Hun territory in the east. Attila needs to return. He takes the meeting with Leo as a face-saving exit. He withdraws from Italy. Rome is spared. But the damage is done. The Western Empire's heartland has been ravaged. The exact cause is disputed. One account says he suffered a severe nosebleed and choked on his own blood while lying on his back in a drunken stupor. Another suggests internal bleeding from excessive drinking. A third hints at assassination, possibly by Ildiko or by rivals within the Hun leadership. No one knows for certain. But Attila, the scourge of God, is dead at approximately 47 years old. His sons divide the confederation. They immediately start fighting each other for supremacy. The subject tribes revolt. 454, the Battle of Nidau. The Gepids, Ostrogoths, Heruli, and others unite against Attila's sons. The Hun forces are routed. The confederation shatters. The Huns retreat east. Some settle in Pannonia. Some disappear back into the steppes. By 469, the Hunnic Empire is gone. The Eastern Roman Empire closes the frontier to Hun refugees. The Huns cease to be a major political force. Within a generation, they're largely forgotten except in legend and in the ruins they left behind. The Hun invasions forced the Gothic migrations that eventually destroyed the Western Roman Empire. The Battle of Adrianople in 378, where Visigoths annihilated a Roman army, was a direct consequence of the Hun pressure wave. The Visigoths only crossed the Danube because the Huns were behind them. The subsequent Visigoth sack of Rome in 410, the Vandal conquest of North Africa, the collapse of Roman authority in Gaul, and Britain. All of these trace back to the power vacuum and migrations triggered by Hun expansion. In the Nibelungenlied and other sagas, Attila becomes Etzel, a powerful but honorable king. The memory splits. To Christians, he's a scourge. To Germanic tribes, he's a mighty warrior ruler. Both remember him. Effective range. The Hun composite bow reached 200 to 300 yards. That 50 to 100 yard difference is a kill zone where only one side can shoot back, and the Huns exploited it ruthlessly. Directly. The Huns refused. They circled, they harassed. They withdrew and returned. A Roman testudo formation, shields locked, advancing in tight ranks, was perfect defense against arrows from the front. Useless against mounted archers, hitting the formation from three sides and firing into the rear as they rode past. The Romans couldn't adapt fast enough. The Hun appearance was deliberately intimidating. The facial scarring from childhood, the reported cranial deformation from binding infant skulls, the strange clothing, the incomprehensible language. Romans built an identity on civilization, law, architecture, agriculture. The Huns represented the opposite, nomadic, lawless by Roman standards, living in tents, constantly moving. They were the ultimate other, and they won. This is why the Huns terrified Rome more than other barbarian groups. The Goths wore recognizable armor and fought in ways Romans understood. You could negotiate with Gothic kings, you could settle them in provinces, you could even recruit them into the army. The Huns didn't settle, they didn't integrate. They took gold and left, and if you stopped paying, they came back and burned everything. There was no way to neutralize them except by paying forever or by military victory that cost more than the tribute. Add the £6,000 one-time payment, plus all the indirect costs, lost tax revenue from destroyed cities, military expenses, depopulation of the Balkans. Historian Kyle Harper's estimates for the mid-2nd century Roman Empire suggest a population of 60 to 70 million. By the 5th century, plague, war, and famine have reduced this significantly. The Eastern Empire's population might be 30 to 40 million. The Western Empire is smaller, perhaps 15 to 20 million. These are rough estimates, but they give scale. And against these populations, the Huns, with perhaps 20,000 core cavalry and 50 to 70,000 total coalition forces when fully mobilized, extract tribute equivalent to millions in modern dollars every year from an empire of 40 million people. The ratio is absurd. It works because Rome can't concentrate force against them. But the Hun invasions are on that list. They disrupted the frontier system. They forced the settlement of Gothic and other tribes inside Roman territory. Those tribes eventually turned on Rome. The Huns didn't destroy the Western Empire directly. They started a cascade that Rome couldn't stop. Because the Theodosian walls built in the early 5th century stopped every assault, the Huns tried twice and failed both times. Without taking the capital, the Huns couldn't break the Eastern Empire's administrative core. They could devastate the provinces, they could extract tribute, but they couldn't eliminate the state. The walls mattered. Hun graves discovered across Central Europe contained composite bow remains. The gold fittings that once adorned the bows survive. Bone plates from bow limbs are found in tombs. The construction method is confirmed. Horn, sinew, wood, glue. These are sophisticated weapons. They require months to build and must be maintained carefully. Humidity, temperature, impact, all can damage a composite bow. The Huns knew this. Finely crafted bows were passed down through generations. They were status symbols. Golden ceremonial bows found in princely graves show the weapon's importance. In nomadic culture, the bow represents power the way a sword represents knighthood in medieval Europe. Attila's legendary Sword of Mars gets attention in later legend, but the bow was the real weapon of Hun dominance. Skeletal remains from Hun period horse burials show animals smaller than Roman cavalry horses, but with thicker bones, wider hooves, denser muscle attachment points. These are endurance animals. They survive on sparse forage. They dig through snow to graze. They don't need warm stables. Roman horses, bred for speed and appearance, were more fragile. In a long campaign, the Hun horse outlasts the Roman horse. And the Huns always brought multiple remounts. This logistical advantage meant Hun forces could maintain pressure for months while Roman cavalry exhausted their mounts. Singidunum, modern Belgrade, was sacked multiple times and lost its status as a major urban center. The demographic impact on the Balkans was severe. Population estimates for the region dropped significantly in the mid-5th century. The exact numbers are unknowable, but the pattern is clear. The Huns depopulated large areas of the eastern Roman frontier. This made those areas vulnerable to later Slavic settlement in the 6th and 7th centuries. The ethnic and linguistic map of the Balkans was permanently altered by Hun invasions that created power vacuums later peoples filled. Tribute, and nearly took Rome itself. 81 years is 3 generations, one grandfather's lifetime. The world Rome knew in 370, where the Danube and Rhine frontiers were stable, where Gothic tribes were allies or manageable threats, where the empire controlled the Mediterranean basin, was gone by 451. And the Huns did it with force ratios that seem impossible. 20,000 core cavalry controlling territory from the Baltic to the Caspian. It worked because of speed, tactical innovation, psychological warfare, and ruthless economic extraction. Visigoth cavalry. Essentially, he fought the Huns using Hun methods. Standard Roman legion tactics didn't work. The Eastern Romans tried multiple times and failed every time until they just paid tribute instead. The lesson was clear. You can't beat the Huns with traditional Roman military doctrine. You need mobility, missile superiority, and coalition warfare. The Romans occasionally had 1 or 2 of these elements, but rarely all 3. The Hun bow design spread. After the Hun invasions, Eastern Roman forces adopted composite bow technology. Byzantine cavalry in later centuries used Hun-type bows. The design influenced Turkish, Mongol, and later Magyar archery. The military advantage was too great to ignore, but the Huns were the first to use this weapon system at scale against Roman forces. The innovation wasn't the bow itself. Composite bows existed for centuries in Central Asia, but the strategic and tactical application against settled civilizations. The Huns understood they didn't need to conquer and hold territory. They just needed to appear, destroy, take tribute, and leave. The threat of return was as valuable as the actual attack. This is why Rome paid. The cost of fighting was higher than the cost of tribute. Until the tribute became so high that fighting seemed preferable. But by then, Rome was too weak to win. No institutions, no bureaucracy, no succession system. Just one man. When he dies, everything fragments. The Huns had this problem. The Romans had the opposite problem. Too much bureaucracy, too rigid, too slow to respond to mobile threats. Neither system was perfect, but Rome's system survived in the East. The Hun system died with Attila. The answer is asymmetric warfare. The Huns didn't need to control territory, they needed to control fear. They appeared without warning. They moved faster than intelligence could track them. They hit where defenses were weakest. They burned infrastructure that took decades to build, and they left before Roman armies could mobilize. By the time Roman forces arrived, the Huns were gone. This made defense almost impossible. You can't defend everywhere. The Huns knew this. They exploited it. Steppe nomads developed military systems optimized for mobility and ranged combat. Settled agricultural civilizations developed defensive systems optimized for holding territory and fighting set-piece battles. When they clash, the nomads have the advantage until the settled powers adapt, or until the nomads settle down and lose their mobility edge. The Huns never settled. That's why they disappeared. They couldn't transition from raiding to governance. Once the raiding stopped, there was nothing holding them together. But there's no Hun capital, no architecture, no coinage, no written records in their own language. They left almost nothing except the destruction they caused and the fear they generated. This makes reconstructing Hun culture difficult. We know how they fought. We know they terrified Rome. We know Attila's name and deeds from Roman sources. We don't know their own stories, their songs, their internal politics beyond what Romans recorded. They're seen entirely through enemy eyes. This skews understanding. But the tactical reality is undeniable. The Huns won almost every engagement until Catalonian Plains, and even that wasn't a decisive Roman victory. It was a bloody draw that cost both sides heavily. During World War I, British propaganda called German soldiers Huns. The epithet stuck because everyone knew what it meant. Ruthless, savage, uncivilized. The historical Huns were none of these things in the simple sense. They were a sophisticated nomadic culture with advanced military technology and effective political organization. But they used terror as a weapon, and they were very good at it. The reputation was earned. When you sack dozens of cities, kill tens of thousands, take massive tribute at sword point, and leave ruins behind, you become the nightmare story that parents tell children. Attila knew this. He cultivated the image. Fear was cheaper than fighting. Make them afraid enough, and they just pay. Ancient sources give numbers like 15,000 dead at this battle, 50,000 at that city. Most are propaganda or estimates. But the cumulative damage is real. The Balkans were depopulated, dozens of urban centers were destroyed, hundreds of thousands of people were displaced, enslaved, or killed. The economic infrastructure of the Eastern Roman frontier was shattered, the Western Roman military capacity was broken, and the psychological trauma affected Roman identity. After the Huns, Rome knew it wasn't invincible. The barbarians could win. This knowledge accelerated collapse, dated to the mid-5th century based on coin finds and artifact typology. Evidence of violent death, arrowheads in bone, sword cuts, blunt force trauma. The bodies were dumped without ceremony. This matches Roman descriptions of Hun massacre sites. But here's the detail that matters. Isotope analysis of bone collagen shows these people came from across the empire. Some from Italy, some from Gaul, some from the eastern provinces. They were refugees or troops brought in to defend against the Huns. They failed, and they ended up in an unmarked pit 1,000 miles from home. This is one site. How many more are still buried? How many people died fleeing the Huns and left no record? The numbers the Romans reported might actually undercount the disaster. They showed that mobility beats fortifications, that speed beats numbers, that fear is a weapon, that tribute is profit. 20,000 riders changed the world, 300,000 Romans trembled, and the empire that ruled the Mediterranean for 500 years couldn't stop them. Not because Rome was weak, though it was weakening, but because the Huns fought a kind of war Rome didn't understand until it was too late. By the time the Romans figured out the counter, the Huns were gone, and Rome was dying anyway. Attila didn't kill Rome, he just hurried it along. The wound was fatal, the Huns just made it bleed faster.